Now, I think when you look at what has happened thus far, the region is definitely undergoing a massive transformation. I think Kareem is only the beginning of the Kareem exit story, which is a tremendous exit story for the region, is probably a major catalyst and a beginning of an interesting upward trajectory in terms of talent coming in terms of more smart capital coming in. And it's going to have a virtuous effect on the whole cycle because I think a lot more people now are going to realize that the window of opportunity to create these large, massive opportunities is there, but it's also timed. And just to give you a sense of, just a quick, back of the envelope kind of calculation, MENA is a sixth of the size of the US GDP, right? So it's $3 trillion MENA, US is roughly 20. Now, if you look at your fair share of tech unicorns in MENA compared to what the US has, US is today, up to Q1, had roughly 147 unicorns, $1 billion plus companies. If you do just a simple, mathematical, like extend that logic mathematically, MENA's fair share, given relative to GDP versus the US, would be 25 unicorns. We've only had one with a realized, unicorn valuation. So where are the rest of the 24? MENA's fragmented. MENA has a shortage of talent in specific areas that need to come in and ignite the whole ecosystem. But we're very bullish. I think that's assuming your fair share, and that's assuming you get to scale. But there are areas where you can go and become super scale, especially that you are super scale in terms of demand. So we're very bullish.
Yeah. Abdulrahman, as you mentioned, you're obviously coming back off a hugely successful exit from your investment in Kareem, and Kareem has been a real sort of cheerleader in terms of pushing regulators to start responding to them as a business. How do you see regulators around the region? Are they becoming more nimble and more flexible to encourage the private sector now?
I think it's not optional anymore for these governments. It's a necessity, and it's pretty vital at this stage. And you see countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE really embracing, just non-core growth, innovation as a core pillar of transformation, digitization. And all these new areas of growth require, rethinking fundamentally your laws, your regulations, your policies. And I think they're going through an interesting iterative process where they're figuring out the balance between, just increasing the velocity of changes and opening up and embracing new models versus, just maintaining, diligence and due process. So in many ways, I think this is going to be resolved. There is a top-down will across these countries to make things happen and make things happen fast and right. Now, if there is anything I would like to see more focus on is actually regulations to spur and step change talent growth. So going back and merging the two questions, I think we need step change efforts to rethink the talent equation.
Yeah.
Talent globally thrives on three things, in my opinion. It's essentially, big thinking, moonshot type of thinking. Talent thrives on density of talent, so people need to feed off each other. And talent thrives on availability of capital to allow them to do these big moonshots. And across these three vectors, you can imagine governments, just thinking of step change efforts to essentially exponentify essentially the outcomes, of how can we get people to think more? How can we set top-down directives, moonshot kind of national agendas? The UAE and Saudi have both done this in incredible ways. So shooting for the moon, having a space agency program, diversifying, Vision 2030. So these are incredible, and we need to see more of these. I think on density of talent, I think to Darius' point, I think you definitely need to open up to the rest of the world. And, when you look at Silicon Valley and you realize that among the Fortune 500 companies specifically, especially in tech, more than 50% of these companies were created by immigrants or, immigrants, whether first level or second level, you realize that you need, it takes a village. It takes the whole world to help you uplift yourself, transform yourself. And lastly is this issue of capital availability. And MENA is massively underinvested, right? If you look at the metrics, the amount of VC capital available today is so, subpar compared to the potential and the opportunity that we need to, in the GCC, multiply the amount of venture capital available today by 20 to 30 times to reach to the global advanced benchmark. So it's huge.
And quickly, are you going to do that? You have 500 million from STC so far. Is there going to be more money coming from you? What happens next with this fund and future fundraisings?
So we're very bullish. This is our first fund. We already have demand to look at a second and a third fund. Institutions, East and West and in region are talking to us. I think, it's fairly interesting. When we first started, if you'd ask us back in 2016 whether we think there is a path for MENA to absorb $500 million in tech and venture capital, we were kind of wary. So we were thinking of how to allocate rest of world versus MENA. I'd say a year and 2 months in, we're extremely bullish on the absorptive capacity of this region to build local champions in a big way and dominate these white spaces and move from being local champions to emerging market champions and potentially global champions. So we're going to double down in a big way. I think you're going to see us do a lot more concentrated bets in region to create these champions.
Great.